Hello everyone, this is Dr. Nisha Nujumudeen. So in today's session, we'll be discussing some of the most important terms related to the concept called as inflation. So now, three important topics related to inflation will be discussed in today's video. One is stagflation, another is reflation, and the third one is skewflation. In a very quick, simple and lucid manner, let's see what each of these are, coupled with current affairs. Having said that, stagflation, the very first concept is stagflation. Now, stagflation in simple terms, it refers to a situation of stagnation and inflation. So now what is stagnation? When the economy is not growing at all, it is completely in a state of constant state. Or let's say when the economic growth is not at all happening, the economy is going to a stage of recession or the economy is in recession. So now the presence of stagnation and inflation, that is called as stagflation in simple terms. To make it even more simple, for example, when there is too much of unemployment in the economy, or let's say when there is high unemployment in the economy, automatically growth cannot happen. But now the presence of stagnation or the presence of high unemployment and the presence of price rise, that is inflation, both go hand in hand. This situation is called as stagflation in simple term. This was witnessed in an economy called as US way back in 1970s. The US economy was not progressing or doing that great. They were in a situation of stagnation. Inflation was increasing like anything. But at the same time, unemployment was also increasing to a greater level. So now what happened in the so-called US economy in the year 1970s is there was a high inflation in the economy. At the same time, when inflation is high, the unemployment rate also kept on increasing. People never had income. Without income, what happens? The purchasing power parity or capacity decreased. At the end of the day, the growth of GDP also started getting affected. So what happened is that during 1980s time, that is 1976 to 1980s time, what happened was like the 40th president of US called as Ronald Reagan. His name is Ronald Reagan. He came up with a concept called as Reaganomics. So just like during 1980s, the late 1980s, when India was faced with the balance of payment crisis, Dr. Manmohan Singh, who was the then finance minister, he introduced new economic policies or reforms called as what? LPG. Liberalization, privatization, globalization, right? To save the economy from such kind of crisis. Similarly, during stagflation situation in US, the 40th president of US, Mr. Ronald Reagan, he came up with a reform or a policy called as Reaganomics. In simple terms, it refers to certain economic policies introduced by the president of that time in order to revive the US economy. So in Reaganomics, what did Mr. Ronald Reagan do is, he went for a widespread tax cut. Abruptly, he started reducing the taxes. He also decided to go for a decrease in the social spending. But for critical sectors like education, health and all, the spending was there. But other social spending, the economy took a decision of going for a decrease in that. And the third decision or economic policy under Reaganomics was to increase military spending, because unemployment was a huge issue. So increasing military spending would give a lot of job opportunities to people so as to overcome that situation. When employment is there, income gets generated. Automatically, the people will be able to have a better purchasing power or capacity to buy products or services. At the same time, inflation can also be maintained. Though the price is increasing, people also is capable to cope up with that to some extent. Having said that, these are the policies taken under Reaganomics. It is a topic related to what? Related to stagflation. And this stagflation is very, very dangerous for any economy. Why? Because in stagflation, you can see a high price rise, or let's say there is what? The presence of inflation. At the same time, what is happening? There is a fall in the economic growth and a fall in the employment, which means unemployment is increasing. The opposite of employment is what? Unemployment. So, price rise is happening. At the same time, economic growth is falling and employment is also falling. This situation is called as stagflation in simple terms. I hope it is crystal clear for all of you. Having said that, the next important concept is called as reflation. So now, reflation is also a very interesting topic related to inflation. For example, when the economy is in recession, what is recession? Slowing down of economic activity. So now, when the economy is in such a situation, when the employment is less, the production is less, the investment is less, the economy is going into a very, very, very bad phase. Or let's say, we will start seeing a kind of negative growth in the economy. That is recession, right? Having said that, when the economy is facing a situation of recession due to lack of demand, why lack of demand? People do not demand for any commodities or services because they don't have employment and they don't have income generation. How long they will keep on surviving on the savings? You understand? So automatically, it becomes the responsibility of the government to trigger the economy back to track. So what will the government do? They'll come up with very conscious or deliberate economic policies to bring the economy back to track. Such a situation is called as reflation in simple terms. For example, during 2019 COVID-19 pandemic, India was entering into recession. We didn't go to recession, but we were entering. So now, as a precautionary measure, what did Indian government do? We came up or we introduced Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. What is that? The 20 lakh crore economic stimulus package. Or I can tell you, self-reliant India mission, right? So right from the vendors, street vendors, to MSMEs, to education, to banking, to all the sectors, money was injected into the economy through various schemes and programs to trigger the economy back to track. So now when the economy is in such a kind of situation, to bring it back to track, some policies or deliberately conscious policies will be taken by the government. That is called as reflation. That's all. Having said that, the next concept is what? The next concept is called as Skewflation. So now, in simple terms, Skewflation is nothing but food inflation. It refers to a situation when there is a rise in the price of only food items, whereas the price of non-food items do not increase. It remains constant or stable. Such a kind of situation is called as what? Skewflation in economics. It is called as skewed inflation because here inflation or price rise is only with regard to what? Is only with regard to the rise in the price of food items. For example, rise in the price of vegetables, meat, milk, etc. All the essential food items, the price increases. Leading to what? Leading to food inflation. Now, when that rise in the price of food item is happening, the price of non-food items, what are they? Furnitures, laptops, mobile phones, etc. All these price of items, which is non-food item, it remains constant or stable. Then that situation is called as what? Skewflation in simple terms. If you see, in India, in the year 2009-10, India was having a very high food inflation. Okay, it was more than 20%. And the wholesale price index during that time, 2009-10, it was just 11%. So now India witnessed a situation where only the price of food items kept on increasing, whereas the price of non-food items did not increase. So that is how the concept called as Skewflation came up. This led to the creation of this concept called as Skewflation. Having said that, 2024 data, if you see, in the month of October, November, December, what is happening? India could see a hike or a surge or increase in inflation, especially with regard to food items or food articles. And I can tell you that the food inflation stood at 9.2% as per October 2024 data. As per November and December data, the food inflation again increased and it is more than 10%. It is 10.82%. Where are we going? So this shows that the real living standard of the population, the All India Consumer Price Food Index, is seriously getting affected to a greater perspective. And many people are unable to match up what? This rise in the price of essential food items. So this has to be controlled. And if you see the overall inflation, which not only consists of food but also other items. That is your CPI, All India Consumer Price Index. That is also too high. According to 2024 November-December data, it stands at 6.2%. There is something called as inflation targeting, right? What is that? To target inflation with the permissible limits according to RBI for our country. That is, inflation must be targeted at the rate of 4% with plus or minus tolerance band of 2%. 4 is the ideal rate of inflation. Up to 6, we can increase what? Inflation. But after that, you should not increase. And what is 2? 2 is the minimum level, below which inflation should not be decreased. But what is the current inflation? More than 6%. It is 6.2%, which shows that our inflation targeting limits the current inflation is crossing that limit. So it is high time that the RBI take very conscious policies in order to bring the inflation towards the targeted perspective. I hope these concepts with relevant current affairs is crystal clear for all of you. So stay tuned for more important concepts related to inflation. The next concept number 26 will deal with few important concepts pertaining to inflation. Thank you and Jai Hind.